Today, we explore one of the most overlooked topics in Agile, the Agile Manifesto itself. It's often misunderstood as some type of framework or recipe of things that we need to do in order to develop an Agile culture. And it's not. It gives us a general idea, just enough information, and it respects the individual DNA that each one of the companies has, allows us to create that culture that will be appropriate for agile tools and processes to be used. Why is it relevant today? Because the AI integration that we're facing has the same type of challenges and the same opportunities that we saw when we went into agile transformations, started agile transformations 20 years ago. So more than ever, we have an opportunity to leverage what we've learned over the past 20 years to help us in what lies ahead with AI transformations. Hello and welcome. My name is Sean, and welcome to Agile for AI. Over the past 20 years, I've been immersed in Agile. I'm passionate about it. As an Agile coach, I share with people my experience with hopes that you benefit from what I benefit in the same way that I benefited from Agile. And now, as I look into the future and I see the challenges that AI poses, I see a really good opportunity for us to leverage those experiences. So, welcome. I look forward to your comments. And let's dive right into today's topic. When we look at the Agile Manifesto, um, we need to understand that it is more than just a few succinct words that don't have a lot of meaning behind it, or they're not very profound. Quite the opposite. We find that there's a lot of wisdom in those few words that we need to internalize. A majority of agile transformations that I've witnessed barely mention the Agile Manifesto. Very few coaches and consulting firms go deep into it. And I think that that's been to the detriment of agile transformations everywhere. When we take a look at what it is that we're doing with an agile transformation, we are literally asking people to rewire their brains in the way that they've been working forever. That's a very difficult thing to do. And if we don't change the company culture, it's impossible because the company culture will continue reasserting itself, requiring people to behave in the way that it's accustomed to. Culture has to change. A very common mistake in agile transformations is focusing just on the processes and tools. Processes and tools are essential. Without the processes and tools, there can't be agility in business. The processes and tools were designed specifically to achieve business agility. So, of course, they are critical. Of course, they are central. And if all that we do is adopt those processes and tools, we're going to get some results, but we're not going to get full results. Full agility comes when we combine a change in mindset along with a change of tooling and processes. These things need to come together. In the past, I've used the analogy of hammers and screwdrivers. If you think of hammers and nails representing waterfall and screwdrivers and screws representing agile, try to think of the time when screws were introduced to the world. Nails were introduced in the Bronze area in around the 3400 BC. Screws didn't start to show up in history until the 3rd century BC. So by the time that screws come around, the world was accustomed to nails. That was the thing that people knew and understood and used. Try to put yourself in those times. Try to imagine that all that you know is nails and a hammer, and somebody shows up with a screw. I don't know about you, but my first thought would be, that's a really funny looking nail. And if you're kind, you'll contemplate, okay, fine, give me your funny looking nail, and you'll go to your hammer and give it a nice whack and make a mess out of things. That's exactly what's happened with agile transformations. We've gone into companies with these new things called agile and agile tools and processes. And without changing the mindset, perspective, the perception of the people who are going to use them, How else would they relate to them? They relate to them and they try to use them in the way that they've always worked. That's not a mistake on the companies and the employees. That's just normal. Again, go back to those nails. You've given me this funny looking nail. And then you call it with a different word, a screw. Okay, fine, I'll hammer it. Then I introduce you to a screwdriver. Well, now you've got a funny looking hammer. Well, at best, you're going to have somebody without changing their mind, without understanding that this is a complete change from the way that we've been working before. You're going to have people hammering screws with a screwdriver. Again, that's exactly what's happened in many agile transformations. Take a look at yours if you've gone through one and things haven't gone well, and see if there truly has been a change in mindset in the people in your workplace, or if they essentially continue to do the same things just with updated tools and processes. Great majority of agile transformations have gone that way. There's been an overemphasis and overfocus on the processes and tools to the expense of to the detriment of the cultural aspects that needed to evolve. Agile transformations are not about revolutions. You can't bring about the change overnight. Just like we didn't shift from nails to screws overnight, literally thousands of years. Hopefully, it won't take thousands of years, but it will take a long time for people to move away from the waterfall ways and start adopting the agile ways to a point where they're both balanced. And today we use nails and screws normal. It's just, but that's just the way that it is. In a similar way, as I said before, there's nothing wrong with waterfall. It's appropriate for a certain type of work. And agile is appropriate for another set of type of work. The Agile Manifesto establishes that mindset that is needed in order to be successful using the processes and tools that Agile leverages that are conducive to business agility. And it does that by creating a framework for organizational evolution, not revolution. We can't go into companies expecting for things to change overnight. That's frankly, I think, disrespectful to the companies, and it doesn't give them credit for all of the successes that they've had over the years. Companies have reached the current point through the successes that they've built upon by doing the work the way that they've been doing it forever. So why change? Again, we have to change the mindset first. The Agile Manifesto is the one that helps us frame how that mindset needs to change. So it's a framework for the organizational evolution. And it's a framework as opposed to a methodology or a recipe, if you may, because I think, because it's respectful. It's respectful and recognizes that every company is different. Every company has a different DNA. We can't change that DNA overnight and we can't throw it away. That would be too risky. That would be too dangerous to do. Instead, we need to incorporate the elements that the Agile Manifesto is talking about into our existing culture, recognizing that when we do that, and the more that we do it, the deeper that we do it, the more success we're going to get from our investment in an agile transformation. And the other thing that's very important of the agile transformation is that this is a guide that maintains human dignity in the technological change that we're implementing. So it doesn't forget the human element, quite the contrary, it makes it central to the transformation, to the cultural changes that we need to undergo. So when we take a look back, past 20 years with the Agile Manifesto, we see that it really is timeless. It is a really good set of values and principles that transcend its original purpose. They're relevant today as we're looking into AI implementations, AI transformations, because it addresses fundamental human needs, workplace needs, in order to implement those changes in a safe way, in a properly risk managed way, in a human way, in a caring way, in a way that is conducive to success. It provides guidance for how to manage the modern challenges that come about from implementing big technological changes. And this is not easy to do. There are a lot of cultural barriers. There were back then when we were starting agile transformations, and there's certainly now as we're looking into AI transformations. People have fear. And fear, what is the basis of fear? The unknown. We don't know what's going to happen. That's very scary. Some of the things that we're afraid of is losing control. We're accustomed, especially from the waterfall perspective, we're accustomed to having a lot of control. Losing that control, that's a scary thing. And indeed, Agile does relinquish a lot of the control, not all of it, but a lot of it, because that's the way to give space for creativity, innovation, and other things to emerge. How do you do that safely? Is what Agile proposing safe enough? And there's a lot of checks and balances built right into Agile to do that. However, like I mentioned before, trust is not something that we can do overnight, that we can expect to happen overnight. It takes time. The Agile Manifesto helps by providing a guideline, a set of priorities and things to focus on, to help us during in the journey to get started, to establish that trust, and to be effective in what it is that we're changing. A lot of resistance to change. It's understandable. People have been working in a given way and they have been succeeding. They have been delivering. They have been producing good results. Why change that? We need to create the context, the proper context for that change to make sense. There's also been an over reliance on process. For a long time, we've been told just follow the process and everything will be fine. And all of a sudden, we're coming in and we're changing that process. That's a scary thing. It takes time. And the other element that works against us is, as I mentioned before, this mindset that fundamentally has a lot of distrust in the worker's capability and the worker's willingness to do the work. All of these factors work against us when we're trying to engage in a transformation, when we're trying to change things. When we look at the AI integration, it's very similar set of challenges as we saw in agile transformations, as we see in agile transformations that are happening today. There's a lot of fear. We don't know what's going to happen. What does this mean? How is it going to affect us? So there's similar fears and resistance. We're seeing the same patterns. A control and command and control mindset is another one of those factors that the AI implementations could make worse, or if we manage them correctly, it could be better. It could improve things. There is this mindset of processes over people. The processes and the tools, the technology is more important than the people. Yes, that's going to create a lot of resistance. And again, this is a place where Agile taught us, as we were engaging in the early transformations, that is really, really, really critical to keep a human element center, keep people in focus as we're changing things. So all of this is to say that there needs to be a cultural transformation as part of an agile and AI transformation. We can't just introduce the new technologies, the new processes and tools. We have to address the cultural elements. And in my experience, this is one of the biggest reasons why so many agile transformations have encountered many problems and failures, because there's been an acquisition by senior leadership of processes and tools without a recognition that in order for that investment to yield good results, there has to be cultural transformation to support it. Again, I go back. It's like presenting this new screw to somebody who's only seen nails all throughout their history and expecting them to use it overnight. No, we need to change the mindset so that when we use the screw, we know how to use it and we use it effectively. People have bought the screws from Agile without changing the mindset. That's why a lot of transformations have run into problems. At least one of the key reasons. So the Agile Manifesto gives us a framework, a blueprint. And frankly, every time that I read it, and I read it very often to remind myself, I'm really impressed by how this group of 17 really put so much thought into it. Really, we're so thoughtful, so methodical, so diligent in figuring out a concise, simple way to communicate really powerful messages. What they came up with was these four values. When we look at them, they're simple words and they're organized in an interesting way. First of all, there's this set of things on the left side of an over, and then this set of things on the right side of the over. What does that mean? Why that format? And this is part of the brilliance of the Agile Manifesto. Didn't eliminate things that were in place in favor of new things. It doesn't replace them. What it does is that it creates a priority to help us resolve conflict as conflict arises. And it does arise. That's normal. And when it arises, it gives us the guide, individual and interactions over processes and tools. That doesn't mean that there aren't processes and tools in Agile. And that doesn't mean that Agile ignores processes and tools. Not at all. There are a lot of Agile practices that are key, as I mentioned earlier, to achieving business agility. And when those processes and tools, any processes and tools, the ones that we've been using forever or the new ones that we're introducing, cause conflict, we value individuals' interactions over the processes and tools. Again, it doesn't mean that we throw away the processes and tools. And we can't weaponize this value to say, I'm not going to follow the process and tool. No, it's taking it too far. What it says is that in order to integrate this process and tool, in order to continue using it, if this is what I've been using forever and ever, we need to evaluate how it impacts individuals in our interactions. When we set that priority, it opens the door of opportunity to revise, to amend, to make an evolutionary change, not a revolutionary one, which would be to throw them away, but an evolutionary change to those processes and tools, whether old or new, in order to make sure that we preserve individuals and interactions, the way that we relate to each other, the way that we interact with each other. We don't impact, we don't hurt, we don't damage our human interactions for the sake of adopting and implementing new processes and tools. Now, we evaluate how they affect them, and then we make decisions. The second one of the values of working software over comprehensive documentation. This is as the Agile Manifesto was written. What it's talking about, some people have misinterpreted this and criticized Agile and saying it's like, oh, there's no documentation. That's not true. And in fact, properly implemented Agile project, Agile work, um, I have seen actually has tremendous amount of documentation. And in fact, the documentation that it has is oftentimes better, of better quality because it's more relevant. It adheres more to what's actually implemented as opposed to what was planned or was intended. So no, not at all. We definitely value comprehensive documentation. And we recognize, because there's this customer centricity from the customer's perspective, what they care is having something that works, something that helps them, and something that addresses their need. They assume that we have the documentation that we need, but that's not their priority. And fulfilling the customer's priority is number one. That's part of customer centricity. So we value more the working software, delivering something that is working, something that is of value to the customer, over spending a lot of time doing the documentation. Again, that doesn't mean that we don't do documentation. Of course we do. In my coaching, I advise teams that any documentation that needs to be written has to be part of the scheduled work. The work is not completed until the documentation is finished. What that might mean is that in delivering something, instead of having a full set of documentation that has every single detail already spelled out and is ready for publication, maybe all we have is a short bullet list. That short bullet list contains the most important information that the business needs in order to support and maintain what has been produced. And we deliver what we need to deliver on time. We don't allow the lack of a thorough, complete, polished documentation prevent us from putting out what we have produced. That's just one example of the trade-offs, the type of compromise that we need to reach, and how we favor what's on the left over what's on the right. The next value of customer collaboration over contract negotiation, again, doesn't mean that we don't have contracts. It doesn't mean that Agile comes in and says, "Oh, ignore the laws. There's the legal department. Don't listen to them." No, of course not. That's crazy. What we're looking at is in the relationship that we established and we nurture with our customers, we're going to favor collaborating with them, reaching viable, amicable workaround solutions to whatever challenges we encounter over beating them over the head with a contract. Ultimately, can we? And sometimes we may have to. Yes. However, what we favor, our priority, our first reach is to seek that customer collaboration and achieve that because we know that we'll get the best result from doing that. We'll please our customers, we'll satisfy their needs better if that is our cultural perspective. There are some companies that the moment that you start interacting with them, you're hit with this wall of paper and legalese. Very difficult to work with. And there are other companies that no, they value and they make that priority of establishing the collaborative relationship for good work together. We're responding to change over following a plan. Again, I've heard some criticism that, oh, Agile doesn't plan. Well, no, that's not the case at all. And in fact, I would say that Agile is continuously planning and revising the plan. It doesn't come up with the plan and says, that's the plan, it's sealed, can't change it. No, 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 no. As we need to change, as we become aware of new information, as we discover things, which is the nature of the work that Agile works with, we adapt plan. It doesn't mean that we don't have a plan. Of course, we come up with a plan and we adapt it as we need to. In addition to the four values, there are also 12 principles. Going in depth into all of these, including the values, is a topic for future videos. But I wanted to just briefly present them to you so you have awareness that they exist. So we have the four values and the 12 principles. And one thing that I want to draw your attention to is that all of this is written in context of software development. It makes sense because it was a group of software developers who got together and put this together. And a question that I'm asked many times now when I worked, for example, with operations teams is how does this relate to me? We don't write any code. That's a very good question. There are industries, social services, for example, who will look at this and go like, we don't have anything to do with software. Why are we having this conversation? Why are we here? This doesn't apply to us. That's an artifact of the way that the Agile Manifesto is written. What I encourage you to do if you've encountered that situation or if you've had that question posed to you, just replace wherever it says software, replace it with something that's appropriate to your industry, to the work that you're doing. One thing that I find works very well is to say products and services. Whatever product or service it is that you're providing, the service may have nothing to do with software. That's okay. These values and principles still apply. There is some translation that you can come up with that is appropriate to your business. So don't be discouraged and don't shy away from the Agile Manifesto, inclusive of the principles, because you think that they don't apply to your business. In my experience, they apply to everything, and I've used it in just about every industry out there or type of industry: social services, software development, different industries within software development, manufacturing, it applies. So take a look, consider it, see how it's relevant to you, and ask yourself, how are we in our company following these values and principles? I consider a good sign, a positive sign of agile transformation when people start asking themselves, oh, the thing that we're about to do, what does that relate to the Agile Manifesto? Or what we just did? Was it consistent with the Agile Manifesto? Was there an opportunity for us to do things differently so that it would be more aligned with the Agile Manifesto? When I start hearing those kind of questions, that's a really good sign that Agile transformation is going well. It's when we're deep into Agile transformations and people, you ask them about the Agile Manifesto, like, oh yeah, somebody mentioned that, but I forget what that whole thing is. That's not a good sign. Okay? This really needs to become part of the DNA of the company as you're moving forward, and you can use it as a thermometer, as a barometer to indicate whether you're heading in a good direction or you're not heading in a good direction. This is why I think that the Agile Manifesto is so valuable and so critical, because it really gives us that framework, that guide in our journey, in our evolutionary journey. The principles are really important because they provide a practical set of fundamental truths that guide our behavior. They are a bridge between the values and the practices. So they give us a way of a path to implement the practices, the agile practices, as processes and tools, and do so in a way that is consistent, that creates a consistent cultural context that everybody can relate to. So beyond the application of the Agile Manifesto in Agile for Agile purposes, as I mentioned earlier, I see a lot of parallels with the AI transformations. And I would invite you to look at the types of challenges that you're currently facing if you're already engaging with AI, and see if incorporating the Agile Manifesto would help you address some of the concerns. Foremost, at the top of my list is the first one, individuals' interactions over processes and tools. That really is a guardian principle. That is the one that protects the human dignity in automation, for example. And especially in the area of AI, I think it's a critical value for us to make sure that we shift towards in our culture, in our company culture, in our personal cultural context, because it will help us create that psychological safety that will make the integration of AI much safer, much more comfortable. So again, there's a lot that we have learned over the past 20 years in doing agile transformations that today is more relevant than ever. It really can set the foundation for us to have a good, positive implementation of AI, a good AI transformation, build the trust between humans and AI systems, preserve the values that we have and enhance them, evolve them in a safe way that fosters collaborative human AI and relationships, and also that creates a culture of continuous learning, that we're open, that our minds are open to always considering new things, learning new things, implementing new things. The Agile Manifesto gives us a really good guide to set on that journey in a positive way, in a productive way, in a creative way. So the Agile Manifesto is short, very succinct, it's very wise. It gives us cultural insight into how we need to evolve in our journey. It has a balanced perspective that we can apply universally, including to AI integrations. With that, I'd like you to take a moment, as I said earlier, think carefully how your agile transformation, if you're engaged in one, is going. Consider if this this review of the Agile Manifesto would help, enhance, improve. I think it's very helpful, very useful, very healthy to periodically take a pause, maybe as part of a retrospective discussion, take a look at the Agile Manifesto and evaluate, how are we doing? How are we aligned with the Agile Manifesto? If you find that you're very well aligned, that probably means that you're doing well. And if you're not, then maybe there's some clues in there that will help you improve in your Agile transformation. And if you're doing an AI transformation, maybe that will help you there too. That's certainly my hope. So with that, I invite you to join me in the comments, and if I've earned it, a thumbs up, subscription, and I look forward to the next one.